Welcome and good afternoon, everybody, to our webinar today, What to Do Now That Event Revenue is Gone. Thank you guys for joining us this afternoon. I'm really excited to be here with you guys to present this information today. During the webinar, we definitely want to hear from you and answer any questions that you might have. And in order to do that, be sure to use the Q&A icon that's at the bottom of your screen. You can click that and submit your question, and I will share that with Karla. If there's any questions that we're not able to get to during the webinar, I will make sure that we answer your questions and reach out to you afterwards. As I said before, I've got Karla Baldelli here on the webinar with me. She is our Vice President of Donor Engagement and is a veteran in nonprofit fundraising, having worked at JDRF, American Heart Association, Susan G. Komen, Salvation Army, Arthritis Foundation, just to give everyone the full list, and much, much more. And so I'm really excited to have her here on the webinar. And Karla, I will pass it off to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Suzanne. Hi, everybody. As she said, I'm Karla Baldelli, and I am just like you. I am a professional fundraiser, and I have been in this industry for 20 years. And so although I haven't seen everything, I've seen a lot. And so today we're going to talk about what happens when we are in a situation like we are in now. But first, I want to say to you, I'm going to ask you how you are doing. You know, I really would like to get a feel for how my colleagues and peers out there in the industry are feeling now. I think you might be feeling worried or anything, but go on to your, go ahead and get used to asking questions, because today's a conversation more than me talking at you. I really love to talk with you. So get used to pressing the Q&A or the chat button, and give us a feel for how you're feeling. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're kind of feeling excited, if you're feeling nervous. We just kind of love to get a feel for that. And what I'd like to say as we begin starting is I just want to thank you all for the work that you do. I've been doing this work for a long time, and I believe in philanthropy, and I believe in the nonprofit industry, and I believe in the people that work in it. And I feel that philanthropy is probably the most noble of all professions. I also believe it is the hardest of all professions. I mean, if it were easy, everybody would do it, right? Because everybody wants to think that they're helping others. And so I just congratulate you all for making this your career choice. And I just want to empathize with you and know that we're kind of in a really interesting spot at the moment. So what is the issue that makes this such a unique time in our careers and lives, and as global citizens, if you will? Well, obviously, we're all dealing with COVID-19. It's just devastated. It's devastated hopes and dreams, right? Not just of the nonprofit industry, but of individuals and people across the world. Millions of dollars, not only in fundraising revenue, but in our economy are in flux. And nonprofits, we truly are scrambling to replace the funds. So this is a big issue. We're not the only ones here. We are in it together. But you know what, guys? We've been in places before, maybe not quite like this one, but I mean, we had September 11th. I was new in my career at September 11th, and we learned a lot there. And many of you have seen times before in your areas, whatever your geographic area is, you know, hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards. There are a variety of things that in the event fundraising world that cause us have to adjust and how we're approaching it, how we're thinking about it, and how we get through it. So today, please put on your hat of we're in this together. Please feel free to be vulnerable. Ask me anything as we go through here. When I say ask me anything, I'm certainly not implying that I know everything, but I'm certainly willing to share with you what I've learned or what I hear from our clients or from my colleagues across the industry. And then there might be a situation where we just have to do some research and get back with you.
Karla, I'll share with you two of our responses to your question. One was from Debbie McDonald saying, feeling good, love our morning prayer times. And then another one that I loved was from Claudia Labby. Hopefully, I'm not mispronouncing your name. Trying to remain hopeful for new creative opportunities to come.
Great. Thank you for sharing. And y'all keep sharing because we really want to hear. You know, innovation does come out of interesting and desperate times, right? And so I think that we really can all be excited about what the future holds because innovation will certainly happen. But here's the real scoop. You know, 44% of the nonprofits just did not have a plan in place to mitigate the losses that are happening with the fundraising events that have had to be canceled or postponed. And so our topic today is to talk about what can we do to sustain that, to prepare for the next one. So basically, where do we go from here? And I want us to think about for just a moment what fundraising really is. I mean, fundraising is about relationships. And whether it's event fundraising, whether it's peer-to-peer fundraising, whether it's social fundraising, it's about gathering people and being together. So it's about relationships. So as we walk through our time together today, I want you to know that from my point of view, we're always going to be talking about what's in it for them, our donors, our attendees, the people who have raised their hands and said, we love your organization. So if you're grappling with this idea of what to do with our events that we rely so heavily on, basically, you've got three options, right? You've got, you can cancel, you can postpone, and you can shift to a virtual event. And those are the three biggies, right? And so I'm sure everybody on this call has been having these conversations. You've been sitting in your conference room, or never mind, your virtual conference room on Zoom. I apologize, in our shelter-in-place world. So you're trying to think about what is the best thing for your organization. I would imagine that you've already made your decision. I'm considering that we're here in May, so for spring events, you've probably already made a decision to do one of these three things. And I just want to acknowledge that none of these decisions are easy. There are a lot of stakeholders, there are a lot of moving parts, and these are complicated decisions. So considering that you've got these decisions made, let's just think about how you're going to approach the fall, because none of us know what's going to happen. So there are some things to really put in place to set you up for success, no matter what the fall brings, right? So today's topics, we're going to be talking about that loss of face-to-face time with donors. The truth is, a lot of us in the nonprofit industry, we actually look at our events as a time to get face-to-face rather than working on face-to-face outside of that. We kind of use it as an anchor, but it doesn't have to be the only thing. And then what can we do to shift the strategy? Really, it's not even shift the strategy, it's shift our thinking. How do we think about it differently? And how do we have the people that care about our causes ready to go along with us into whatever that shift might be? Because we want their buy-in. We want them to show up. And we want them to be totally committed when they do. And then clearly, there are many of you that are joining us today, and we all have organizations of different sizes, with different complexities, with different missions. So what I'm going to talk about today, I think, scales to every single organization that's represented here on our call. So we want scalable solutions for every organization. So 5 reasons that we actually hold events, right? Well, if we think about this in 2 ways, quite frankly, we do this for us, for our nonprofits. We think about ourselves. We need to raise funds. We want to increase donor loyalty, and we want to communicate our mission and bring people closer to us. But from a donor perspective, what's in it for them, they're looking at it as a place of connection. How do we connect with the organization? Or it could be, how do I connect with the people that have a shared passion, where it might be I bought a table and I want to connect with the people that I've invited, or it might be a peer-to-peer event where I want to connect with my team, or connect with the people that really care about our family because we're going through this situation. And then ultimately it gives an opportunity to provide that gratitude to our donors. So it really comes into these 2 categories. What is the nonprofit need from it? And then ultimately, what does the donor or the attendee or the supporter need from the event? And so we've got needs-based conversation that needs to happen, right? But today we're going to think about in building relationships, how do we focus on the people who care about us? Because right now, in this particular season, we need to think about that. So here are some of the reasons why, from their perspective, that they choose to join us at whatever type of event we have. To connect with people with their shared passion, right? I said that already. And they really want to feel special about their contribution. You know, the person who's really changed when they make a gift is not necessarily the organization who receives the gift. The person who is changed actually is the person who makes the gift. And then they might want to gain access to really other people that are in that room or at that event. May they be the luminaries who are speaking or the influential volunteers that are also working for your cause, and then forming meaningful relationships with the organization that they're supporting, but most of all, to understand that they, in fact, are having an impact. You know, isn't it great to go to an event and know that you're having a great time, you have fellowship, you've been able to look forward to something, but all of that is really making a social difference. So those are the reasons why, some of them, that people come. So now that we don't have the opportunity to fill the event for people to actually come, what do we need to do to actually fill the needs of the organization for revenue recovery and for the organization? So I'm going to suggest to you today that we do that through strengthening relationships. Because as I said earlier, fundraising is, quite frankly, a relationship business. And we all think that, but you know, we don't always take time to really think about what are the ways that we can strengthen those relationships. So if you think about where you are all sitting at the moment in your life, in your homes, or wherever it is that you might be, there are relationships happening all over the place. I got a call literally 20 minutes before this call started from one of my best friends in 3rd grade, just calling in to say, hey, I've just been thinking about you. Are you okay? How's the family? You probably are having the very same sorts of things happening in your life. I also know more of my neighbors now than I ever knew before. So relationships are happening, and they are becoming the core and the strength of our communities, but they've always been the core and the strength of our nonprofits. So let's just get back to the basics. So we're going to talk about 3 different things. There are a lot of ways to strengthen relationships, and we have a lot of strategies that we can share around that. But what we're going to talk about today are those that we can do right now at this moment in time that we can bring meaning and let people know that we care about them. So we're going to talk about wellness check-ins. We're going to talk about one-to-many communications and how we can do that. And we're going to talk about reconnecting, because honestly, it's great to call somebody to check in, but let's make sure that friendship continues. So let's start with wellness check-ins. I call them wellness check-ins because I just made it up, but a lot of people call them wellness check-ins. You might call them a care call. There are a lot of things that you can call this. This is actually a really simple strategy. I tend to work on the premise of keeping things simple and elegant, try to uncomplicate everything, because a wellness check-in only actually works if you actually make the call. So I try to keep it simple. So who do we call, right? So that's the first question. Well, if you've had an event that's just been canceled or postponed, gosh, call your event attendees, call those event sponsors, call those table hosts, call your volunteer committees. Those are people that would definitely appreciate a call, because, you know, they're dealing with some disappointment about the event that they're not going to be able to participate in, but they're also dealing with what's going on in the world today, and they've got a lot of feelings around that. And I would add to that list your mid and your major donors, because mid and major donors in times like this are really the people that are going to get us through. They were here with us before. They've cared about us. They've cared about our missions. They've cared about the people we serve. So it's time for us to really call them and let them know that we care about them. Make them feel special and important. But what I think is really key here is just have an opportunity to listen to them. We spend so much of our time in the nonprofit industry talking at people about the great work that we're doing and trying to inspire them to get on board with us and to join our mission. Well, this is a time to listen to them and see what they really care about and what's going on in their life and help them if we can. And then, of course, if it's appropriate, talk about the mission, because if they care about you as much as you think they do, they may be wanting to hear how we, in fact, as nonprofits are navigating these times. And if they're watching the news, they're hearing that nonprofits are going to be what are really important to getting our country back up and running, that we're going to have a really important role. So they're going to want to know how you're doing. So what do these calls sound like? So I've got written here an anatomy of one of these calls, but I'm just going to kind of tell you what it sounds like. These are not complicated, and they are not at all intimidating. It really is to pick up the phone and call and just say, hi, can I speak to Suzanne? And Suzanne's on the phone. And you say, Suzanne, is this a good time? This is Karla Baldelli, and I'm calling from ABC nonprofit. I just wanted to call and let you know that we care about you and check in on you and see how you're doing right now. And then the conversation goes from there. This is not, it's very specifically not a solicitation call. So we are not talking to them about making a gift. And this is not even a thank you call to thank them for the gifts that they made. It's actually a call to say, we care about you. We wanted to call and see how you're doing. So let me give you some examples of how these calls sound. So one of our clients, they really jumped on this and we're very excited about it. And because what I promise you is you probably are the one that will feel better when you get off the call than your donor. So we had one of our team members at one of our clients, she called and her particular list was for more senior citizens. And she called and it was a lovely lady who was very independent, but she lived in an assisted living home. And she was very prepared for the shelter in place. And because of where she lived, there were people there to care for her meals and to go out to the shopping and things of that nature. But she really loved her cat. So she had a beloved cat and she thought she had bought enough cat food, right? And in this particular case, and this was before shelter in place. So they started before the shelter in place order came down. And so that particular team member, not everybody would do this, and you certainly don't have to, but she delivered her cat food and put it on her front porch so that she would feel better about it. You know, that was a way that she could help in that moment in time. And I can assure you that relationship is strong, and that Mary, that was the donor's name, Mary is very grateful to that team member, but the team member felt really great about their day. If you couldn't deliver cat food, you certainly don't have to deliver cat food. It could have just been that's right. I need to probably go out and get more food for my pets as well. So the calls can go a lot of different ways. In fact, another example of how calls might go. Now this happened to be at 9/11, but it was many, many years ago. And this doesn't happen in every call, but we were doing wellness calls, and this particular donor that I called, we had done a great job of forming a relationship. All the strategies that we do around our mid-level program and our major gift program were being executed really consistently at the organization where I was serving. And we got the gentleman on the phone, and he was very concerned about our organization. And he just asked what we were going to come in a downfall in the budget. The call wasn't even to talk to about our budget or a gift. And he said in that moment, he said, we want to make sure that you are strong coming on the other side of this particular devastating time in our country. So we're going to make up the difference. And quite frankly, that it was a seven-figure gift that they made up at that particular time. So you never know what's going to come out of a wellness call. It could be goodwill that you're going to see later. Or it could be a big gift, but at the end of the day, it's just the right thing to do. So how do we begin putting these together and plan to put these calls together? So getting started, again, it's not complicated, and you have everything you need to do to be able to do these calls. You've already got it. You just have to think it through. So organize the right team, include your staff, include your leadership if possible, include your volunteers. Isn't that the beautiful thing about being in the nonprofit industry? We have volunteers that can help us in these moments when we need it. And volunteers, if they have the time, and if they are not essential and they're at home right now, they may have more time than usual. So organize the right team, get them mobilized and get them activated. And then, not complicated again, but provide them with the list of things that are essential for them to be able to conduct a very informative call if it goes that way, providing bullet points. that are really authentic to your mission. I mean, if you're healthcare, you might want to make sure that you've got, the contact website for the CDC to give different types of things. Or, if you are in animal welfare, you're going to want to be able to provide resources if they have questions around what's happening in that space. Also, I mean, if you are a faith-based organization, be prepared to pray for people. Ask them to pray for you and be able to pray for them, right? So these are the types of things that this list would include, things that are very authentic to your organization. It doesn't have to be over one page, but just have that at the ready and a list of resources to offer people. And then thirdly, create a sense of ownership over the list. I can assure you, in fact, I know she's on the phone today, one of my friends who's also a client who leads a marvelous organization. They do a check-in call every morning with their team, and they're a faith-based organization, so they do prayer time, but they also take some time to share what they're hearing back from their donors and from the people that are important to them, and that really encourages one another, and it also gives them all a real sense of ownership of making sure that these calls are happening and that they're being able to share the needs of their constituencies. And lastly, get some realistic goals and track this, right? Because that's what's really important for us from an operational side, from our business. We've got to know that we're not setting goals that are too high. So let me just say it like this. If you have 2,500 donors or that fall into your mid-major, and then let's say you were going to have 500 donors at your event, whatever it might have been, for one person that might look daunting. So let's take that list and let's put it into some munchable chunks, if you will. One person might be able to make 20 calls a week if it's a volunteer. They might be able to make 50, but really ask them questions to determine what is the capacity and bandwidth and set appropriate goals. Stretch yourself a little, but don't stress yourself out over it, because what's the most important here is that the calls actually happen. Not that we put the list together and not that we get prepared for the calls, but the calls actually happen. And then we want to track that, because we want to be able to come back. I always say that tracking is about the people. It's operational for us, but it lets us know that we did communicate with our people. So,
Karla, I got one question real quick about.
Sure. Love it.
There's a lot of people involved with the execution of our event and attending the event. Who should we be calling?
Right. So that's a very good question. And so I think, I don't know the number that you're talking about, right? But I would start with the people that were involved in the execution of the event, right? Because they are the closest stakeholders, and quite frankly, they're the ones probably that are the most disappointed. So let's say you have a committee, I'm making this up, but if you have a committee of 30 people, activate your team, your staff, to call those 30 people and to check in on them first. And then offer them the opportunity to be a part of your call list as well, because maybe that will be the thing that's healing for them. I just look back at my kids' private school where they go. I'm on the board. I certainly don't look at them as a client by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm very involved there. And we had a very disappointing situation where we had to we shifted it to virtual, and it turned out just fine. But because we had senior parents who were very invested, they were really disappointed. So being able to activate them in that moment was something that was meaningful for them to do, that was still going to achieve and accomplish what they were hoping to, maybe in a different way, it looked different. But at the end of that, they felt really good about it, and they feel like that they still contributed what they were hoping to. If I didn't answer your question the way you want to, feel free to reach out to me after the call, and we can certainly talk about what that might look like for you. Okay, one-to-many communications. Now, so if you're one of those organizations that has a list of 2,500 people. I mean, I know one of the luncheons that I worked on many years ago when I was with the Salvation Army here in Dallas. By the way, I'm from Dallas, if you haven't noticed my accent. I know that you're all from all over the country. But we had 1,200 people that came to that luncheon. And so I'll just use that number, right? That's a lot of people that would come, and so that would be daunting. So it might not be possible for us to actually reach that many people, depending on the team that we had to work with. So what we would do is put together a one-to-many communication, and that could look like a lot of things. things, right? It could be broadcast messages that are very simple, they're cost effective, but they reach a big, broad swath of your constituencies that care about you. And it might be from your CEO, or it might be from the chair, or it might be from the volunteer that was in charge of the event, to just say, hi, this is Karla Baldelli. I just wanted to touch base with you and let you know how much we appreciate your commitment to this organization. And gosh, we sure are sorry that we're not able to gather like we had planned on, but you know what? It's going to be okay. We're going to be able to gather again, and let me tell you what we're doing. Right? That might be a broadcast message, or it might be a text message, or it might be a conference call, it might be a town hall, Facebook Live, Zoom chats. There are a variety of ways to do this. But what's important is that people know that they were important enough to get your message, and they didn't feel like that that they were being talked to, you know, behind a dais, right? It was kind of personal for them. But if I could say, the most important thing is to give them a way to talk back, right? What we want is to start a dialogue. We don't really want to talk at people. So what's the purpose? The purpose is to share what's happening with the mission. How are you relevant right now in these current times? Because what I can assure you is every single one of you and every single one of your missions are relevant in the time of COVID-19, whether you're directly or indirectly affected by this crisis. You are relevant, and you can message relevancy to your people. And who are we going to talk to? We're going to talk to those event attendees. We're going to talk to our mid and major donors. You're going to talk to your supporters. You're going to talk to your sponsors. You're going to talk to your team captains. You're going to talk to your auction donors. That's your big, broad list, and include them. Be more inclusive than exclusive in this particular project. So how do we get started on that? So this is really, again, not as complicated as you think. I think often we overcomplicate how we do our lists, right? So right now we're going to be more inclusive than exclusive. So let's don't worry as much about, you know, wealth ratings and scores and segments. Let's make sure we just have everybody that cares about you included. But determine the right channel to reach out, right? So is the right channel for you email, or is it Facebook Live, or is it text messaging, or whatever? So you've got to determine the right channel. And how do you do that? Well, first of all, the world's changed in the last month. The things that might have been foreign to some constituencies before, if Zoom was not something somebody had heard of a month ago, I promise you they've heard of it today. People are getting text messages all the time from the organizations they care about. My place of worship, I mean, I get several text messages from them today informing me on what's going on. So there are a variety of ways that you can actually talk to your people. And then invite them to this insider event, right? And invite as many people as possible, because from a cost perspective, depending on your channel, it really is very affordable to talk to one-to-many people. And if you need to know what those options might be, we're certainly happy to help you with that. But be more inclusive than exclusive. So one organization that I got some feedback from a couple of weeks ago, they did a broadcast conference call. And in that conference call, they invited 10,000 people. They actually had 3,000 people show up on the conference call, and they had 2,700 people who stayed through the whole thing. People have time right now, and they are giving that time to those organizations that they care about. Make it simple and make it personal. We can talk about that if you want to. You can certainly ask questions, but your messages should be simple, not overcomplicated. You don't need to tell them the whole world at one time, and make it personal. And then provide a way to continue the conversation. So whatever the mechanism you choose to go to market with, to talk to your people, provide them a way to either email back or to have a text chat with someone, or questions and answers. Because this is a dialogue, we want them to know that they are a part of the solution, and that they are not just simply somebody to be informed. And you know, I think I just want to share this. It's a great story, and it wasn't in the midst of a crisis. So I'll qualify that. So back last summer, I was still serving on the other side of the nonprofit role, in a leadership role, and our CEO was delivering a message around a huge shift that was happening in our organization. And so we put together a conference call with the CEO. You've all done this a million times, so this is nothing that you haven't done. And my office is to actually send out that invitation to the donors that we were inviting, and there were a lot of them. Let's just say there were a lot of them. And we always gave them an opportunity to email back. And the email to our CEO came to my office. Well, in this particular occasion, there was, and I was in healthcare, and so with the really fighting a disease. And we had a donor who emailed back our CEO, of course, thinking that she knew him. She'd met him at an event a couple of years ago, and maybe he remembered her, maybe he didn't. I'm not real sure. But she emailed back to thank him for the invitation to this conference call. But she wasn't sure she could make it because she had just buried her daughter the day before, who had died from the disease. And that email came back into our team. Now, the key is when you offer someone the opportunity to talk back to you, you've got to respond. And so we just did what we thought was the right thing, and we got the message. Our CEO is traveling, but I reached out to him immediately. He immediately gave him all the pertinence. He immediately reached out to that donor. And at the end of the day, we had done the right thing. But here's what we didn't know. This particular donor was an event donor, and she had been a corporate sponsor. So we didn't know a lot about her personally. We knew a lot about her corporate sponsorship and the company that she served, who was a very generous sponsor to our organization. What we didn't know was who she was personally. And so a few weeks passed by, and she was so moved by the outreach of the organization. And it came through a conference call that we had invited several thousand people to attend. She called back, or she emailed back to our team, and we got it. And she said that her daughter had a trust fund, and that no one in their family needed it, and they didn't need to do anything else with that trust fund. And they wanted to donate that trust fund to our organization. We had no idea what that meant, right? What did it mean? And that trust fund, quite frankly, this is a big number, I know it, but the trust fund was $10 million. And I don't know where that landed because that went to the major gift team, right? But the truth was, we just did the right thing. We gave them an opportunity to talk back with us. We had a conversation with them, and we deepened that relationship. And so that's what a one-to-many communication can be very important for the future of your organization. And it's not hard to do. Now, here is the secret, right? So there's always a secret sauce. Well, the secret sauce is the reconnection, right? So you connect in the time of a crisis. You bring people in for insider information, whatever. There's a lot that they want to learn and they want to know about. But it's after that, what do we do next? And that is the reconnection. So this is your new post-event strategy, right? You already had a post-event strategy, I'm sure. But in your post-event strategy, make sure you're reconnecting with those people, that you're calling them in a few months, that you're sharing with them, how sorry we were we missed them at the event. Or you're sharing with them, we're just so happy that finally we get together, right? There's a reconnection that happens. It's very strategic. This can be cultivation or it can be stewardship. And for me, those are different, right? Cultivation being relationship driven and focused on the person, the stewardship being focused on the gift. So it can be either, depending upon the person, but ultimately this deepens your relationship. You want your people to know that they are your friends and that you care about them and that they are important, and you cannot do this without them, because they are the ones that are the hero in the story. So the goal here is to have year-round meaningful relationships with your donors. I'm just going to share a story, and I know she's on the phone, and I may get it wrong a little bit, so give me some grace for creative license here. But one of the things that I work really hard with our clients to do is really to put together an executable plan for relationship development within their organization. And so this organization has been very consistent. They're really great at that. So they know in real time, who's giving what. So they had a donor come in January, and they do their proper follow-up, right? So there's a real strategic follow-up around the relationship that happens. And so that was made. Well, then now that person's on their donor file, and so whenever they started their wellness calls, at the beginning of April, this particular gentleman received a wellness call just to check in, say, hey, the world has changed, and we care about you, and we want to call and just check in on you. That's the whole reason for us calling. And then just this week, they got a major gift in from that person that they didn't even ask for. And so my point here is when the relationship is right and you do the right things in the relationship and the relationship is deep and it's meaningful, where a major gift might take 3 years to get in the real world, whenever you're really developing that relationship and this moment in time when it means so much to people, you shrink that window. At least that's our hope. So how can you reconnect, right? There's a million ways. Yes, you can pick up the phone. Now, let me just tell you, here's my phone right here. How many of you are actually scared to pick up your phone, or you wake up in the morning and the first thing you say to yourself is, oh my gosh, I get to call people today. Well, if that's not what you say, I want you to change your thinking. Just shift your frame, right? That I'm going to pick up the phone and call and talk to people and connect. But if you can't reach them by phone, you can certainly send them a thank you video. Videos are great. I mean, you can do a TikTok if you want, right? I mean, how fun is that? Give people something to smile about, giving something happy in this particular time whenever they're at home. Social media is important. Personalized notes, right? Handwritten notes are always the winning combination. People love, love, love that. Letters from your CEO, text messages. It doesn't really matter how you follow up with them and reconnect, but that you do follow up and reconnect with them is the most important thing, because people basically wear one of two signs every day. And if I had one, I'd show it to you. But they have a sign that one side says, make me feel important. And the other side of the sign says, what's in it for me? And those of us who are fortunate enough to be in this wonderful business of nonprofits and serving others, we get to make people feel important and show them the impact of what's in it for them every single day in every single conversation. So it's not hard, but it is about them. Remember, we don't want to call and talk about ourselves. Well, I wanted to call and tell you what we're doing. The first thing you want to do is you want to talk about them. And then if they want to talk about you, then we do that. But reconnecting is key. I always say to people, don't do it if you're not even going to follow up, right? Don't waste the money, the energy, or the time of doing something if you're not going to follow up. Because this is about a relationship, and a relationship requires talking to people or reaching out, sending a note, or connecting in some way. So how do you do that? Well, you develop a plan, right? A plan is important, and working the plan is more important. So you develop a plan to connect with each supporter, right? And it doesn't have, if you've got 2,500 people that you've pulled on your list, you don't have to reach each one of them personally if you don't have the team that's big enough to do that. It can be through some automated type of system. We live in a world where people actually are okay with people reaching out to them in an automated way, or you could have a Zoom coffee with somebody, right? So there are a lot of ways, but make a plan. What does the plan look like? And then execute the plan. And then just taking it further, let's make sure we don't forget, right? So we've got this moment in time where we're really talking to people and getting to know them. So now let's build a calendar for what those touch points are going to look like throughout the year, so that we truly do get that relationship that's year round. And you don't even know what you don't know about your own plan. So I was just with a client before shelter in place. It was just the Friday before. And I said, let's talk about your touch points and let's put it on the whiteboard. I kind of went old school on them, right? And we got the whiteboard, and everybody had their computers open, and they were like, oh my gosh, no, we've got it right here on the Excel spreadsheet. And I said, well, I can't see your Excel spreadsheet, and just humor me, just indulge me for a minute. And we put it on the whiteboard and we put it all together. And then we were able to see what we were missing, that we didn't have a story arc, right? We had a whole lot of things that were going out that could stand alone, but we didn't have one story, right? So just make your calendar and know what you're saying to your people and know what the story they're getting is from your organization. And then again, I always say this, set reasonable goals and track. Do not come in and think, I have to call all thousands of these people. Maybe you call 250 of them and you divide it up amongst 5 people, right? You have to set a goal that you can actually reach, but push yourself a little and then track it. And again, bring people in to help you. You're a nonprofit who does amazing work. There are people that volunteer for you, people that give to you. They want to be involved in the work that you're doing. And right now they need that meaning in their lives more than ever. So enlist help. Help is on the way. And then lastly, what I'm going to say is boldly fundraise. I know we're asking ourselves these questions of, is it okay to fundraise or is it not okay to fundraise? Because, I would have to say that basically most people are good, right? And we want to do the right thing. And we want to be sensitive to what people are going to. I'm going to suggest to you today that you actually trust the people that are involved in your mission. trust the people that you're asking to give to your mission, that they're going to do what they can, but they need to know that your mission is important and you're not going to stop moving forward and being steadfast in the good work that you're doing under any circumstances. And what I can promise you is this: if you really worked on strengthening your relationships, now we've talked about strategies that are appropriate for the here and now, this moment in time of COVID-19, but there are a lot of other ideas and really proven best practices that you can do in time when the times actually when they turn, right, and we're on the other side of this. What we're doing now is going to set you up for success then, and it's going to then we put other practices in place. But what I can promise you is if you do these things, you will see the results. And I can promise you, if you don't do them, you won't see the results. So take courage, be strong, get to know your people, be transparent, be honest, be authentic with them, and empower them to make a difference in a cause that really is something that's important to them, and boldly fundraise. So what are our key takeaways today? I would say the very first thing, if you leave here with nothing else, this is a time to listen. Listening is the most important thing that you can do, and you'd be surprised what you learn. And you'd be surprised how it makes you feel. Connect human to human with the people that care about you. And you must maintain your personal connections to your most important supporters. If your list is really big, your event was too big, you don't have people that were enlisted to help you, you don't have those volunteer committees or a team in place that can help, then choose those people that really are the ones that are the most important to the success of your mission, and make sure you're connecting with them. Your important supporters are going to be your supporters no matter when. And make sure that you remain relevant and demonstrate your impact. That's where we really have the opportunity to display our sensitivity, to make sure that we know, and it doesn't take a lot, right? But to make sure people know that we're not blind to what's going on. So if you have something that you're sending out, maybe what you're sending out is just fine, but maybe just a little bit of just repositioning of in times like these. Or we all are in a similar place, right? There's never been more of a time when we all have the very same human experience that we're having now. And most of all, keep fundraising. Be bolder than ever, because your mission is important, and make sure people know that you're being a good steward of your mission, because you are going to continue to get out there. You're going to go boldly into the marketplace and let people know that you're doing good work, and that all of these people that are your friends are doing good work with you. So, questions. I'm sure that there are some out there, and please send your questions in. And if we don't get to get all of them, we certainly will get back with you. And can't promise we know all the answers. So if we don't, we'll do our best to find them and get back with you. Suzanne.
Yes. So we got two questions in here that I think are really good ones to address. Going back to, I'm assuming this question is kind of related back when you were talking about the wellness calls. What if I call someone and they express that they're not doing well? So I'm guessing, what if a call isn't all, positive and someone is really needing some support?
Right. So, that's going to happen, because if you are genuinely calling them, you might get someone, but what an honor that they would feel so vulnerable they could actually share with you, you know what, today's not my best day. And then you offer them a supportive time to listen to them and what's going on with them. I could give you some examples, but I certainly don't want to divulge confidences. But we had a situation that was similar to this, where one of our team members, one of our clients, gave someone a call, just a wellness call. And in that moment, the woman answered the phone, and her husband was ill, and he was in the hospital. Now, he did not have COVID-19, but he was in the hospital, and she couldn't go see him because of the restrictions that are around the hospital. And so they never talked about the mission, and it was a great mission that they had, but they talked about her, and they talked about that, he knew that she missed him, and he asked her questions like, so tell me about your husband, right? And then they were a faith-based organization, so he was able to offer the opportunity to pray together. But at the end of the day, it wasn't about what he said to her. and the fact that it was a problem. It was the fact that he was just a person who was supportive, and he chose to listen to her in that moment. And so yes, that's going to happen sometime, because that's just the time that we're in.
Another question. We have wonderful volunteers, but there's always a nervousness having them help make calls, even when
I'm sorry.
um, worry about them getting into conversations they think they might have answers to, but might not. So
Oh my gosh, I hear your pain. Oh my gosh, yes. I've lived that world. Um, so I would say be selective about the volunteers that you ask to partner with you in this. You know, that is always a risk, right? But I would encourage you that it's more important to place the call than it is not to place the call. But I can assure you that in every case I've done this, the volunteers that I've enlisted to do this with me, we've actually had training calls for that, and not like real formal kind of training things, but where we get on the call and we rehearse, right? And we actually call out. We don't want to make sure that we're giving advice, because we need to, we need to be neutral. We talk about all those things, but be selective and be discerning in who you invite to be a part of this particular part of your mission with you, and give them some guidelines and practice. And you know what? If they go off the rails, which just might happen a little bit, and it's happened to me numerous times, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine.
um, another question was, is it appropriate to ask for the donations that they would have made to our event?
So, not in a wellness call. You certainly may call and make a fundraising call. So, everything that you do needs to have an intention behind it. So, one call can't be everything. So, just to give you an example, let's just talk about a thank you call. I had an example with the organization that I served with, but we got a really large major gift in. And we thanked her 7 times. I could go through, I know exactly what dates all of the thank yous happened. But in every one of those cases, because she was so well known to our organization, the conversation would go like this. Well, Suzanne, I'm going to pretend that you're the donor. So Suzanne, hi, this is so and so. I'm chair, right? We know each other, and I just want to thank you. Your gift is absolutely astonishing. Do you know what it's going to do for the people? Right? It's all about the thank you. But then, while the chair is on the phone, says, "Oh, and Suzanne, while I have you on the phone, do you mind if I just want to share this with you too?" Well, all of a sudden, it's no longer a thank you call. It's become something totally different.
Mhm.
And I want to encourage you not to do that in a wellness call, because the wellness call intention is to, in fact, share that you care very much about them and that they are important to you. Now, if you want to make a fundraising call, do it, right? If the time is right, if the moment is right, all of those things line up, and it's you think that that's what you need to do, then call and ask Suzanne. Say, Suzanne, we're just so grateful that you've always been such a marvelous supporter of our event. As you know, this year the circumstances have just been really challenging for all of us, but the event is really important to the revenue generation to support the mission of our organization. And I sure am hoping that your family is doing well, but I wanted to ask your permission to just ask if there was any reason why you wouldn't consider still making your donation, because it certainly would have a huge impact on the organization. That's perfectly fine. Do it now, but make it a fundraising call. Don't try to do both of them in one thing.
I think that's a good point. Focusing on one thing at a time when you're reaching out, but then also prioritizing the relationship and how much you value
Exactly.
these supporters.
And the minute
Um,
you get off that phone, send a note.
yeah,
Everybody wants that follow-up note, right? I got one this morning. I'll show you from my friend Rachel, right? It's got an R on the front, and she enclosed a cute picture of our kids that were together at an event, and it just made my day. So just make someone's day and send them a note. Okay, Suzanne, I'm sorry I interrupted.
that's okay. Lastly, there were a couple questions about the session being recorded. And so I will say, yes, the session is recorded, and we will post it to our social channels. So if you're not already following us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, follow us on one of those and you will see a post where we've shared or posted the recording of this webinar. So you can go back and take notes from the anatomy of a wellness call. Um, but otherwise, thank you so much, Karla, for sitting with us today and sharing this information on the webinar. For anyone else listening, we have one more webinar this month, next week, with Karla again, and Max Bunch, focused on preparing for an economic downturn. And be sure to visit arcadegroup.com/webinars to see any information about our upcoming webinars. So thank you, Karla, and thank you to our attendees for joining us today, and have a great rest of your afternoon.
And be well, everybody.